A computer just simulated tonight's match 10,000 times. 10,000 simulations. The result, Amanda Anisimova wins 53% of the time. That sounds simple. That sounds decisive. But here is the part nobody is talking about. The same experts who ran that simulation are telling their readers to bet on the other player, on Anisimova, the one their own model says should lose. Think about that for a second. If a coin lands on heads 53 times out of a 100 flips, would you bet real money against it landing on tails? Probably not. Yet, that is exactly what tennis analysts are doing right now tonight with their own numbers. They built the model, they trust the model, and then they are betting against it. So, what is going on here? Is the model wrong? Is there something about Anisimova that a computer simply cannot measure? Or is there something buried inside that 53% number that changes everything once you actually understand what it means? Because here is the truth most people miss when they see a stat like this flash across a screen. A number without context is just noise. 53% sounds like a clear advantage. It is printed in bold. It gets tossed into headlines. But numbers like this can hide more than they reveal. And tonight on a hard court in Cincinnati, that hidden layer might be the entire story. We are going to break this down piece by piece. Why the experts are contradicting their own data. What Amanda Anisimova brings into this match that the stat sheet does not fully capture, and why Anisimova, ranked 20 in the world, keeps showing up in these must-watch moments in the first place. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why that 53% number is not what it looks like. And you will understand something about Anisimova that explains far more than any prediction model ever could. But first, you need to understand exactly what is on the line tonight. Because this is not just another second-round match on a random Tuesday. This is the kind of match that can quietly redirect a career. To understand why tonight matters so much, you need to understand who is walking onto that court. Anisimova is 21 years old. She is currently ranked number 20 in the world. That number alone tells you almost nothing unless you know where she started. A few weeks ago, she was not even inside the top 30. Then she went to Washington, D.C. and did something no Filipino tennis player has ever done. She won a WTA Tour singles title. Not a small event, a real tour-level title. And she did not just win it. She came back from a set down in the final and beat Jessica Pegula, a player ranked inside the top 5 in the entire world. That win alone would be a career highlight for most players. For Ayala, it was one stop on a much longer run. She carried that momentum into the Canadian Open, made it all the way to the round of 16, and now she has landed in Cincinnati carrying a 17th seed, her highest ever seed at a tournament this size. Now look at who is standing across the net from her tonight. Amanda Anisimova is ranked number 10 in the world. She has already been to 2 Grand Slam finals in her career. She is not some rising talent hoping to prove herself. She has already proven herself on the biggest stages tennis has to offer. Just 2 days ago, she walked onto this same court and demolished Zanap Sanmez 62-63. No drama, no scare, just a clean, dominant performance from a player who knows exactly what she is doing. And here is the detail that makes tonight even sharper. These two have never played each other. Not once, not at any level, not in any tournament. There is no head-to-head history to study, no pattern of who has the other player's number, no previous match where one of them found a weakness to exploit. Every single prediction being made tonight is built on guesswork dressed up as analysis that is worth sitting with for a moment. When two players have faced off before, models can lean on real data. Patterns in movement, patterns in nerves under pressure, none of that exists here. Tonight is pure unknown territory for both of them. And the stakes are not just about pride. They are printed in dollars. A win tonight pushes EA one step closer to a fourth-round payday of $81,752. Keep advancing. And the number at the very top of this tournament is $185,220. That is the kind of money that does not just pad a bank account. It changes a season. It changes a career trajectory. So, this is not a throwaway second-round match buried on an outer court. This is a top 10 opponent, a career-high seed, A first-ever meeting with zero history to lean on and real money on the line for both players. Which brings us back to that number 53%. Once you understand what is actually at stake tonight, and once you understand that there is no past data to fall back on, that percentage starts to look a lot shakier than it did a few minutes ago. If you are the kind of person who likes digging past the headline number to find out what is actually true, this channel is where that happens every single time a match like this comes up. Stick around, because the deeper we go into this match, the messier that 53% starts to look, because right now we are just getting started. The closer you look at the numbers behind tonight's match, the less they seem to agree with each other. Let's start with the numbers from Anisimova's last match, because they tell a story all on their own. 2 days ago against Sanmez, Anisimova scored 23 winners. She fired 7 aces. She won 68% of her first serve points. These are not the numbers of a player who is nervous or rusty. These are the numbers of a player peaking at exactly the right moment. Now look at Ella's path to this route. He was leading Ruse 6-1 3-0 when Ruse retired with an injury. A dominant scoreline, yes, but also an incomplete one. There was no third set, no pressure moment where Ella had to fight from behind, no real test of how she handles adversity in this specific tournament. So ask yourself this: when a model calculates win probability, how does it account for a player who has not actually been pushed yet this week? That is question number 1. Here is question number 2, and it might be the more important one. Before Cincinnati even started, IA played 9 matches in 13 days. Singles and doubles combined back in Toronto. 9 matches, 13 days. That is not a light schedule. That is the kind of stretch that wears down a body, even a 21-year-old one. She left Toronto with a round of 16 finish, then turned around and walked straight into another WTA 1000 event days later. No real off week, no real reset. So, does a predictive model actually weigh accumulated fatigue from a different tournament in a different city? Or does it just look at rankings, recent scorelines, and surface preference and call it a day? Because if the model is not accounting for 13 brutal days in Toronto, then that 53% might be built on incomplete information from the very start. And now for the third layer, the one that makes this whole picture even harder to read. Alex Ella travels with something most players on tour do not have: a massive, vocal, endlessly loyal following of Filipino fans who show up in numbers that stun tournament organizers. It has happened in Australia. It has happened in Washington. It happened again in Toronto. And by every account, it is expected to happen again tonight in Cincinnati. You would think that kind of energy is worth something on the scoreboard. Extra adrenaline, extra belief in tight moments, a crowd that will not let her feel alone, even 3 sets deep into an exhausting match. But here is the uncomfortable truth. That same crowd showed up in full force at the Australian Open earlier this year. Flags everywhere. Chants ringing through the grounds. Fans who traveled hours just to be there. And I still lost that match to Alicia Parks despite winning the first set easily. The crowd roared. The crowd believed, and it was not enough. So which is it? Is the crowd a real weapon that shows up in the box score somehow? Or is it an emotional boost that feels powerful in the moment but does not actually change outcomes when a truly dangerous opponent is standing on the other side of the net? Nobody has a clean answer to that. Not the analysts, not the bettors, not even the players themselves. Put these 3 layers next to each other and something strange happens. Instead of the picture becoming clearer, it becomes murkier. Anisimova is playing some of the sharpest tennis of her season. Ella has not been fully tested this week and is carrying real fatigue into a top 10 matchup. And the one factor that is supposed to tilt things in A's favor, that deafening home away from home crowd, has already failed to save her once this year on an even bigger stage than this one. So what is 53% actually measuring? Is it measuring Anisimova's form? Is it measuring Ella's fatigue? Is it measuring history that does not even exist between these two players? Or is it just a number, confident sounding and precise looking, standing on top of a foundation that is far shakier than anyone wants to admit? This is exactly where standard prediction models hit a wall. They are built to crunch what can be measured. Rankings, recent scores, surface stats. But some of the most important forces in a match like this cannot be reduced to a spreadsheet cell. And that gap between what a model can count and what actually decides a match is about to matter more than you think. Here is what almost nobody explains when they flash that 53% number on screen. That figure is not a measurement of who is better. It is a measurement of pure statistical probability built from rankings, recent form, and surface data, nothing more. And the very people who built that model are telling their own readers to bet against it tonight. Let that sink in for a second. The odds being offered right now sit at roughly $210 for an Alla win against $1.72 for Anisimova. Close. Almost even. And when analysts compare those market odds to their own 53% simulation, they are finding something the casual fan never sees. The market is pricing EA lower than the model says she deserves. In betting language, that gap has a name. It is called value. It means the crowd setting the price is underestimating her, even while the crowd's own math says the match is nearly even. Think of it like a stock trading below what it is actually worth. The company has not changed. The fundamentals have not changed, but the market has not caught up yet to the real value sitting right in front of it. That is not the model being wrong. That is the market being slow. So now flip back to that headline number 53% versus 47%. On paper, that reads like a clear gap, a real edge, something decisive enough to build a confident prediction around. But strip away the decimal point and look at what that gap actually represents. A 6% difference. In a two-player match, a 6% gap is not a landslide. It is barely a nudge. It is closer to a coin flip than a mismatch. The bold number on the screen was never telling you Anisimova is clearly better. It was telling you this match is close enough that the tiniest factors could flip the outcome entirely, and that changes everything about how you should be reading tonight's matchup. Now connect this back to Isla herself, because this is not the first time a number has undersold her right before she did something remarkable. Walk back to Washington. She entered that tournament without the label of a favorite. Nobody built a highlight reel around her chances before the week started. She was the story nobody was watching for right up until she was down a set in the final against a player ranked inside the world's top 5 and somehow turned the match completely around to win it. The player everyone assumed had the edge was Jessica Pegula. The player who actually lifted the trophy was Alex Ella. That is not a coincidence you can wave away. That is a pattern. A player who keeps getting underestimated right before she proves the number wrong. So, here is the twist sitting underneath tonight's headline. 53% was never a wide gap. It was a coin flip wearing a costume that made it look decisive. And the same experts who built that number are quietly betting against their own headline because somewhere underneath the surface stats they see something the model cannot fully capture. If that sounds like a stretch, stay with me because the numbers we are about to look at are not theory. They come directly from Aya's actual match stats this week, and they tell a very different story than a single percentage ever could. Let's start with a number most fans scrolled right past this week. Second serve points won. In her win over Ruse, Ella won 69% of her second serve points. Anisimova in her win over Sonmez won 50%. Read that again. On the serve that is supposed to be a player's weakest, the one opponents are trained to attack, Iyala is outperforming Anisimova by 19 percentage points. That is not a small gap buried in the middle of a stat sheet. That is one of the clearest indicators in tennis of who can hold their nerve when a point gets uncomfortable. Second serves are where matches get decided in the moments nobody remembers afterward. And right now, Iyala owns that number. Here is the second piece of evidence. And this one has nothing to do with this week at all. Alexa has beaten 7 different top 10 players in her career. 7. That number ties her with Elena Rybakina for the most top 10 wins on the entire WTA Tour this season. Read that sentence one more time. Ella has never even cracked the top 10 herself. And yet, she is tied with a Wimbledon champion for beating the players who live there. That is not luck showing up once. That is a pattern of a player who gets better, not worse, when the opponent across the net is more dangerous. And here is proof number 3. And it did not come from a stat sheet at all. It came directly from Anisimova. Before this match was even scheduled, Anisimova was asked what she expected walking into tonight. She did not talk about Ella's serve. She did not talk about Ella's backhand. She talked about the crowd. She said she expects a packed stadium full of noise because Iela's following has turned matches into events all on their own. Think about what that means. The player who is supposed to have the statistical edge tonight is already mentally preparing for pressure that has nothing to do with tennis. She is bracing for the atmosphere before the first ball is even served. Now bring all three of these pieces back to that opening question. Why would experts build a model that favors Anisimova and then turn around and recommend betting on Iela? Because the model only sees what can be measured in a spreadsheet, rankings, recent scorelines, surface history. It cannot measure a player who wins under pressure on her weakest serve. It cannot measure a player who has made a habit of beating players ranked higher than her over and over across an entire season. And it cannot measure an opponent who is already thinking about crowd noise before she has even stepped onto the court. Here is one more detail worth remembering because it says something about who Ella becomes when a match gets uncomfortable. Earlier this season, she was down 4-0 in a deciding third set. Nearly finished. Most players fold there. She did not. She saved a match point and won 5 straight games to close it out. That is not a fluke. That is the exact kind of composure a stat sheet can never fully capture, and it is exactly the composure tonight's match may come down to. So the 53% was never lying to you, but it was never telling you the whole story either. And once you line up the second serve number, the top 10 record, and an opponent who is already bracing for the crowd before the match even begins, the picture looks a lot less like a clear favorite and a lot more like two players standing on genuinely even ground, which leaves one real question. With the numbers this close and the composure this proven, what actually decides a match like this tonight? So, what is the real answer here? 53% was never lying to you, but it was never telling you the whole truth either. It was a number built from what a spreadsheet can measure. Rankings, recent scores, surface stats. It was never built to measure a player who wins on her weakest serve, who has beaten 7 top 10 opponents this season alone, or an opponent who is already bracing for crowd noise before the match has even started. That gap between 6 percentage points was never a wide league. It was closer to a coin flip wearing a headline built to sound decisive. And if I walks off that court tonight with a win, this is not just another second-round match added to her resume. It pushes her deeper into a tournament where she is already seeded higher than she has ever been seeded before. It adds another marquee name to a season that already includes a stunned Pigula and a first career title. And it puts her one step closer to a conversation that felt unthinkable just a few months ago. A serious run at the top 10 before the season is even finished. But here is the part nobody can answer for you right now. Not the model, not the odds, not even the players themselves. When the score gets tight tonight, when the crowd gets loud, when 1 point decides the whole match, what actually wins? Is it the ranking on paper, or is it the player who keeps finding a way to prove the paper wrong? Tonight we find out. So here is the real question heading into tonight. Do you trust the number on the screen, or do you trust the player who keeps rewriting it? Drop your prediction in the comments before the match starts, because once the scoreline is in, everyone becomes an expert after the fact. And if you want to see exactly how this plays out, stay close, because the moment this match ends, we will be back with the full breakdown of what actually happened and whether that 53% held up or got proven wrong all over again.